Hey guys, Duranasaur here. I just wanted to, after my first video, I decided I kind of wanted to try to do this little mini series on history of private servers, vanilla private servers in World of Warcraft. So I'm kicking off this first one talking about Scriptcraft, since that's the first server that I had personal experience on. So Scriptcraft started in, I think, the late fall of 2011. It was run by a guy who goes by Gummy. You may have heard of him. He is actually currently working on a Burning Crusade server. So I'll put a link to that server down below. Even though Scriptcraft kind of got a bad rap for getting shut down the first time and the second time as well, their scripting was always fantastic. And I think that Gummy really knows what he's doing. The problem that he's had in the past is just personal time and then having a good staff around him. So if he addresses those things, there's a good chance that TBC server could be actually really good. So anyway, back to Scriptcraft. So Scriptcraft, I started on it pretty much right after it began. The unique thing about Scriptcraft was that it wasn't your normal 1x rates everything server. It had 1 to 5 experience rates, and it also had an option to start at level 49. This is probably a big turnoff to a lot of the community now, but it's actually something that I still think is a great thing to do with vanilla servers. Even if you did instant 49 and did the 5x experience rates, you still had to put about 10 hours into your tune to get it up to max level, and then you had to put in whatever time it took if you wanted to level up their professions, if you wanted them to be able to do transmutes and things like that. So it was still, you still had to put some effort into your character in order to be able to do max level content, which I think is what a lot of people play vanilla for. It was just that it didn't require leveling 1 to 60 at 1x experience rates. When the server first opened, I think the max population ended up being somewhere between like 500, 600, 700. After a few months of me being on there, word got out on Reddit and 4chan, and the population just soared. I think it got up to almost 2,500 people, which back at the time was a huge number. It was the most that had ever been on a vanilla private server up until then. And I think that if you kind of compare it, it was a similar feeling as being on Nost and getting up to whatever 7,000 plus people. Just the number of people that are there and that are probably max level. That's the thing about Scriptcraft, is the vast majority of people playing on that server were probably max level. So that's 2,500 level 60s that are doing, that are PvPing, that are raiding, all those things. The other big thing about Scriptcraft, the thing that I think was why people were willing to go and play on there, was that the scripting was actually pretty good. Like I said before, Gummy knows and knew how to script pretty well. It was all 1.12 talents and items. He didn't try to do any of the like progressive item and patch release like Nostarius and Crestfall are talking about doing. But in order to compensate for that, he did tune raids to be more difficult. I think it was kind of across the board. All bosses had about 10% more health, and a lot of their spells and even just normal white hits did increase damage up to 10%. So the content was tuned to be more difficult for sure. And then also, it's one of few servers that ever released AQ40 in its entirety. So Scriptcraft 1, he released all of AQ by the end of it. I was actually in one of the guilds that was able to clear AQ. And it was buggy. Trash was a bit messed up. And even at the end, Gummy was still working on bosses. So you might go in there 1 week with a strat down for a particular boss, and then come to find out that he's actually reworked the way that the boss functions. So you kind of have to mess with your strat a little bit, which is irritating, but it also kind of keeps you on your toes in a sense that it's not necessarily, going on and reading some 10-year-old post about, hey, this is how you do this particular boss. For a lot of those bosses, because Gummy and, well, it's hard to find resources on how they were, and Gummy kind of trying to figure out how to make them a little bit more difficult, you did have to go in and pull the boss a couple times and figure out, okay, how does this boss actually work? Which I think is something that is severely missed with private servers, and especially vanilla, is that people are just so used to all the bosses being the way that they were, which is good, but then there's no learning the fights. There's no exploration, I guess, with raiding. It's all very much like just read what's been out there before and emulate that. So that part of it I enjoyed, even though it wasn't Blizz-like. I still had a lot of fun with it. Scriptcraft. So Scriptcraft 1, yeah, they released through AQ. It wasn't long after 2 or maybe 3 guilds killed Cthulhu that the server ended up shutting down. There was a bunch of drama surrounding a guy named Pablo. So if anyone played on Scriptcraft, they'll probably remember the whole Free Pablo movement. Essentially, a guy got into a raid with a guild that he wasn't in, did like half the raid with them before they realized, like, hey, this guy's not in our guild. So they reported him. He got just a permaban for all of his accounts. He kind of freaked out. People rallied behind him, whatever. But I think a lot of that was actually connected. The server getting shut down, I think, had more to do with Gummy thinking that he didn't have time to deal with that and everything else. At the time, I think Gummy was still trying to run everything on his own. I don't even know if he had like GMs to just handle regular tickets and everything. I think he was sort of doing all things all the time just by himself, which is insane. And I think he was going back to school at that point. So he might have been looking for an excuse to get out of the server and figure out, how to gracefully leave, and unfortunately what he ended up choosing was to just shut down the server after a bunch of people got upset about some silly drama. So Scriptcraft 1 got shut down, I think around late April, early May of 2012. So it ran from, I want to say, probably like November, December of 2011 till late April, early May of 2012. So an okay run. What is that, like 7 months or something? An okay run there, but what ended up finally, so after it got shut down, a lot of the guilds sort of scattered. That's when Q Gaming ended up happening. If anyone remembers Q Gaming, I kind of addressed that in my other video. Did not have anything scripted, to the point where they didn't have any protection for people exploiting, hacking, or whatever. So duping was just rampant. And they didn't have MC scripted, and they got mad when people tried to do MC. So Q Gaming failed miserably, and then a group of people actually got a hold of Gummy and talked him into opening the server back up. And I think they actually funded the server being brought back up. They got a bunch of money, gave it to him so that he could open the server back up and not have to pay for it himself. So that's when Scriptcraft 2 came up. Scriptcraft 2, I think it was just like max like 2 or 3 months after Scriptcraft 1 went down. Scriptcraft 2 came up. Everything pretty much the same. I mean, it was same scripts, same setup, everything. It only lasted until through BWL and ZG content before Gummy again, I think, got just too busy with all of his real life commitments. So he ended up selling the character database and maybe some scripts. I don't know. That part's always been a gray area, whether or not he actually gave any of his scripts or anything to Valkyrie, the Valkyrie project, which is now, again, the project that has brought us Elysium and is now bringing us NOS 2.0 or whatever it is. So that is Scriptcraft in a nutshell. If you have any questions about it, feel free to ask me below. And hopefully I'll be able to come out with some more of these videos in the future and maybe go over Valkyrie, Emerald Dream, and any other servers that I've played on. So thanks for watching.